The structural features of an organic compound tells us whether we're looking at a nucleophile or electrophile. The nucleophile reacts with the electrophile in a known bond-breaking or bond-making process. So let's review chemical reactivity principles. Stop the video and fill in these two blanks. And determine which one is more reactive, unstable high-energy substances or stable low-energy substances. The answers are, and. A reaction occurs when reactants collide with sufficient energy and correct orientation for bonds to break or form. Stop the video and answer these two questions. Does sufficient energy mean high temperature or low temperature? Does correct orientation mean the blue takes path 1 or path 2? The answers are. Let's talk more about sufficient energy and bond strength. So stop the video and fill in the blanks in these sentences. So the answers are, to break a strong CF bond, that would require a lot of energy, which means high temperature. To break a weak NO bond, that would require little energy, and that would mean low temperature. This table shows the amount of energy required to make specific bonds, or the amount of energy released when that bond forms. Organic chemists often talk about activating a CH bond. Stop the video and try to figure out what that means. Activating a CH bond means breaking that strong CH bond and replacing the H with another atom or group. Every chemical reaction involves energy, so we can describe the reaction energy in terms of thermodynamics or reaction rates. Thermodynamics involves the reactants and products. We can look at the amount of energy required to break the bonds in the reactants and the amount of energy released when product bonds form. The difference between the amount of energy required and the amount of energy released is delta H. So strong bonds means stable, weak bonds mean unstable. Teflon is a compound which has very strong CF bonds. Those strong CF bonds make Teflon stable and unreactive. Those strong CF bonds leads to these properties of Teflon. Nitroglycerin has weak NO bonds, which makes this compound unstable and very reactive. Those weak NO bonds leads to these properties. Due to these properties, nitroglycerin is used as an explosive. This table shows the bond distance and bond strength for various bonds. Stop the video and see if you can see any trends between bond distance and bond strength. If we compare bond order, for example, a carbon-carbon single bond, carbon-carbon double bond, and carbon-carbon triple bond, note that the bond distance decreases with increasing bond order, but the triple bond is much harder to break than a single bond. That's also true for the other single, double, and triple bonds. Also note the trend in the hydrogen-halogen and carbon-halogen bond distance and bond strength. This is a more extensive table of bond dissociation energies. Let's review. Stop the video and fill in the blanks. And the answers are, we looked at resonance structures earlier. Resonance stabilization means it's better for pi electrons in charge to be spread out over 3 or more atoms than concentrated between 2 atoms. Compare these two structures. Stop the video and figure out which compound is more stable and why. The answer is, we can describe the energy in a chemical reaction by looking at reaction rates. 3 factors determines how fast the reaction occurs: temperature, concentration, and the catalyst. What does structure tell you about the reaction rate? If a reactant has easy access to the reaction site, the reaction will go faster than if it does not have easy access to that reaction site. One thing to remember is that proton transfer or acid-base reactions are very fast. So proton transfer is often the first step in a reaction mechanism. Let's review reaction rate principles. Stop the video and fill in the blanks. And the answers are, experiments can be performed to determine the rate law of a reaction. X and Y tells us the order of the reaction with respect to each reactant. The reaction order in the rate law tells us the number of each reactant and the rate determining step in the reaction mechanism. So remember that a reaction mechanism is a sequence of steps by which bonds break and form, and the mechanism helps us explain product distribution as well as to break the product of a reaction. Also remember that the Rate determining step is the slowest step of a mechanism. This is a reaction energy diagram. Stop the video, label the following in the diagram, and then answer these two questions. The answers are: thermal represents the reactants and products only, so delta H represents the thermodynamics. Kinetics represents everything which goes on in between the reactants and products. So we can look at the activation energy and intermediates. A reaction energy diagram tells us about a mechanism. So stop the video and answer these three questions. And the answers are: most organic reactions are equilibrium or reversible reactions. So you can apply your knowledge of Le Chatelier's principle to shift the reaction in one direction or the other by changing the concentration or temperature or pressure. So you want to synthesize an organic compound in the lab. You know the reaction is an equilibrium reaction and is exothermic. You can choose reaction conditions to maximize the yield and to minimize reaction time. So for an exothermic reaction, high temperature shifts the reaction toward the reactant side and actually lowers the yield. Using an excess reactant shifts the reaction toward the product side based on Le Chatelier's principle. So if you have to use a lower temperature, you probably want to use a catalyst to make the reaction go faster.